Secondary Education Superintendents Advisory Council, Monday, November 29th, 2021. Roll call, Ms. Davis.
Mr. Alexander.
Present.
Mr. Brockes.
Here.
Dr. Coker.
Here.
Mr. Corley.
Here.
Mr. DeVilliers.
Here.
Dr. Fountain.
Here.
Dr. Corey. Dr. Gray.
Here.
Mr. Javia.
Here.
Mr. Jenkins.
Here.
Dr. Joffrion.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Dr. Joseph.
Here.
Ms. LaViolette. Dr. Lewis.
Here.
Mr. Narcisse is excused. Dr. Orling.
Here.
Mr. Powell.
Here.
Ms. Tanner.
Here.
Mr. Watts.
Here.
And Mr. Williams is excused. You have quorum.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to recognize any new members to the council. If there are new members to the council, would you please raise your hand? Mr. Clay Corley from Minnesota, Patrick Jenkins from St. Landry Parish. Welcome. At this time, we'd also like to acknowledge our outgoing chairperson, Mr. Wes Watts.
As this Thanksgiving season comes around, I'm very thankful. Very thankful to pass the torch. I have enjoyed the time. Thank you for your dealing with me, putting up with me. I think if we're ever going to do anything in this world, it has to be fun. So hopefully, we took care of business. We did business. We were serious about the work we do, but it has to be fun. So some of that silliness, I hope you. Well, thank you for enduring that. So I've appreciated my time. Thanks for the support. I enjoyed doing it, and I am very thankful and glad to hand it off to the very capable Mr. Sheldon Jones. So thank you all. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Watts, for your leadership. Congratulations as well for being named our 2022 Louisiana Superintendent of the Year. At this time, we'd like to recognize guests that we have with us today for our council meeting. Business Board Member Ronnie Morris is here with us. Mr. Morris, thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to be here. Are there any Business members or legislators that I might have missed or present? If not, welcome to all of our guests. Our next agenda item, approval of minutes from the June 3rd, 2021 meeting. So I have a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by
Second.
Superintendent Henderson.
Second.
Second by Superintendent Coker. Any comments? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Our next agenda item, consideration of an update regarding school and district accountability measures for the 2020-2021 school year. Do I have a motion to receive? Motion made by Superintendent Alexander. Second by Superintendent Joseph. Dr. Brumman.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I am very much looking forward to working with you, Mr. Jones, over the next year. You and I have already been in contact a number of times, and I know that you want to keep an open line of communication, as do I. I want to also take a moment just to thank Mr. Watts for his work over the last year. It certainly was a challenging year with all the things we have faced together. Before Mr. Lambert goes into his presentation, just want to acknowledge a few things around accountability. One is, it was, I hate to use the word again, but an unprecedented situation. After not having testing at all in the spring of 2020, and essentially going into the spring of 2021 and not having reliable data for a couple of years, we knew that we needed that information. And I appreciate everyone here and throughout the state really working with us as an agency to make sure that we could get information on where our kids are academically, and we were able to capture information. We had roughly a 97% participation rate, and so that allowed us to capture information. We know that if we look at our comparison to 2 years ago, we know that we dropped about 5 points in terms of proficiency, which, I don't think it's a story that received coverage that it deserved, but if you look at us in comparison to other states, we we weathered that storm relatively well in terms of the drop of 5 points. Now, we also know that there were disproportionate impacts in some areas. We know that there was disproportionate impacts with virtual learners as compared to students who were fully face-to-face. We know that our younger learners were more significantly impacted. We know that math was more significantly impacted than ELA. We know that some of our student groups were more significantly impacted. So we have work to do, and I believe that we're all acting with urgency to overcome those challenges that we're facing. But a few things around accountability. One, we had to make decisions on how to handle 2020, 2021. I think we have a pretty good plan for that. And then we were also simultaneously in this group, as well as in other locations, thinking about what could the future of accountability look like for the state. We know that, and even this group made it a priority that K2 is really important, and going all in on literacy in K2 to make sure that we're addressing that foundational skill early in our schools. So we knew that that was important. I think we also can all agree that the high school experience is shifting, and preparing students for high school looks and needs to look a little different than it's looked in the past. And then as a result of that, our accountability system needs to shift to make sure that we are getting the leverage in that area that we need and deserve. So we have a BESI work group now that's also beginning to look and explore the accountability system comprehensively, which I think is good. But today, for your presentation, Mr. Lambert is here, and he's going to work through 2020 accountability, and is certainly available to answer any questions you may have. And if it's something that we need to go back and look at and explore in terms of getting you an answer, we're happy to do that. But at this point, Mr. Lambert, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Bromley. The purpose of today's presentation is essentially to just provide a quick update on what we're going to be doing over the next week or so around accountability, answer any questions that you may have, and just be here for you. So our current situation as we look at SPS and DPS in the national context, the Federal Department of Education provided an opportunity for states to request a waiver of accountability for last school year. Our board did opt. Our board did opt to do that, and then subsequently, after we opted to do that, they waived their policies around the production of official school performance scores and district performance scores for the state, but they did give us very specific instructions that we were to generate as quickly as possible, preferably by December 1st. We're not quite going to make that December 1st, but we anticipate releasing those on Friday. You all should have received invites as superintendents to 10-minute briefings with me and Deputy Assistant Superintendent Baird, who are going to provide just context for you for your district, just your district's data, your school's data, that you may share with your principals. Ahead of our actual release on Thursday, we will drop to superintendents the full statewide file as we have in the past. Those will, of course, be embargoed until the department posts those on our website. And Dr. Bromley provides a briefing of that information on our normally scheduled school system leader call that you all will participate in. The next slide kind of talks through what is simulated SPS, DPS. As we talked about, we waived those requirements. It's an unofficial calculation. We use very similar data, very similar methodology, but there were some adjustments to it. We know that this was a year unlike any other, not to sound like a broken record, but by not producing official school performance scores and district performance scores, and instead producing these simulated scores, BESI and the department was able to honor its commitment from the very beginning to not use this data for evaluative purposes, but really just for informational and planning purposes. So just for some context, as you all are thinking about these things, we pulled together some information about why this information might not be useful or as useful as an official accountability score. We think that this provides insights into the relative strengths and weaknesses that you all experienced during a pandemic year. But we think that this data has some key differences that we should share and some distortions that we should share, including higher than usual non-participation rates impacting assessment results, including some subgroups being higher or lower participation than they might have been in previous years. The waiver of graduation requirements during the pandemic impacted graduation measures, which for our high schools is a significant component, and for many of your schools is close to half of your schools, or student population would be high school age. Lastly, the methodology for calculating progress was slightly different from how we've done it in the past, using a skip year methodology. So all in all, we think that there's a lot of distortion in this data that we should take into account, and particularly nuance in your particular school district systems and schools context that you all are going to need to talk about and look at as you interpret with your principals and your board members about what happened last year. As a quick refresher, this is the breakdown of how school performance scores are calculated. These weights did not change. We did them exactly as we have in the past. So by comparing this, you can look at those relative strengths and weaknesses. Some key questions that we would recommend superintendents and school leaders think about as they look at their SPSs and DPSs that we've simulated. One, were your assessment participation rates in 2021 substantially different from previous years? Were there subgroup disproportionality in there that you should look at and know for your context? And then the second one that we should caution everyone to look closely at as you're looking at any change of year over year, why your DPS or SPS might have increased slightly or decreased not as much as you might have expected, you should be looking at whether or not you think that might be being driven by something else. Did your cohort graduation rates increase at a faster rate? Did more of your students earn credentials that they may or may not have had to have been assessed to receive that credential? Did you receive credit in various places that you wouldn't have had there not been a pandemic? So there are places within this we think that superintendents should spend a lot of time understanding and not simply going out and saying, look at what this score is, because there's probably more to the story if it changed in a way that you don't expect. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions and hand it back over to Dr. Bromley afterward.
Are there any questions from council members?
Can you give us some examples of what things would or have changed? You said at the end of your presentation. What are some of those things?
I think the most significant area that you could look to would be your graduation outcomes. So in your high schools, you might see a high school that school performance score actually increased. It's very possible, right? 50% is graduation outcomes in some way, whether it's grad rate or strength of diploma. So if your grad rate went up because a large number of students who would have otherwise had an assessment requirement that was waived, or they completed the year virtually and y'all were able to support them differently than you would have in a traditional year, that grad rate going up is going to significantly impact that school performance score, and your assessment index is a very small percentage of the high school graduate, or the high school SPS formula, right? It's 12.5% is your EOC, 12.5% is your progress, and then 25% is ACT. So those assessment measures, which would have been more impacted most likely because of the number of times to test, all of those things, those are going to go down, but 50% of your formula likely went up. So I think there's just a lot of places you just sit down and look at your data, and when we brief you in those 10-minute briefings, we'll try to have some of that context for you, and then if we need more time, we'll schedule more time with each superintendent.
Any other questions or comments from council members? So this thought is to a certain extent forward thinking. As we look at our 2021 SPS and DPS, has there been any conversation in the department about growth relative to performance this spring? I do have some thoughts and some concerns about which score will we be using as we look at growth. We'll be looking at what we all appreciate as the 2021 score, which is I appreciate it would also be our 2020 score, which would also be our 2019 score, compared to our performance this spring, or would there be more of a performance for growth based on the simulated score? I know that there was a skip year methodology used this year. Again, it's forward thinking. I'm just curious, have there been any conversations about growth for next year?
Our current thought is that we will run those formula exactly as we've run them in the past, using the skip year for the first half of the progress index measure, and then using actual data for this year. All of this is real student information. The difference is that the VAM that we've run in the past didn't use skip year methodology. We find very consistent outcomes within the skip year methodology. It doesn't cause significant pause for us. We've got a lot of time to sort through that. The second thing that I would share is the board is actively looking at the entirety of the accountability formula, and one of the key components of that is the actual progress measure itself. So the board, of course, will be reviewing that, studying that. Dr. Bromley and I talked about the growth measure pretty regularly. That's something that we're super interested in. There are a lot of ways to do it. Lots of states do it different ways, hybrid approaches to what we currently do. So more to come on that.
Any other questions or comments from council members? Superintendent Brown, is there anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, just ask Mr. Lambert if he doesn't mind, just run through that timeline one more time around when the system leaders will get information and what that might look like.
Of course. So we're briefing superintendents beginning tomorrow, full pack days, 10 minutes with each of you. You should receive your individual district and school results the morning of the briefing, if not late the night before. Dr. Barrett and I will do your briefing, about 10 minutes each. And then Thursday evening, you will receive the statewide results for your review as you all are looking at the information of the data. That will be embargoed until the department announces its release on the website on Friday. And the superintendent, Dr. Bromley, will provide a briefing of statewide results to superintendents on our normally scheduled system leader call on Friday.
At this time, we'll have public comments. Ms. Davis?
No comments.
No public comments. We have a motion on the floor. Moved and seconded to receive the report. All in favor, aye? Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 741, Louisiana Handbook of School Administrators regarding Act 473 of the 2021 regular session. Do I have a motion to receive?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Superintendent Joffrion, second. Second by Superintendent Gray. Dr. Brown?
Yes, sir. During the 2021 regular session, there was legislation passed that addressed discipline expectations and discipline laws in our schools. And so at this point in time, what we're doing is we are bringing forward to our board policy that simply aligns itself to that legislation. This is not, policy that we created in-house. It aligns to the legislation that was passed as Act 473 during the 2021 session. Mr. Bradford will kick off this report, Assistant Superintendent, but also just want to take a moment to recognize Joan Hunt, who's always with us, but Ms. Shanika Adams, who is our new individual at the agency that's overseeing a lot of the child welfare and attendance work. This has been a place for over a decade where the department hasn't had a staff member really helping to coordinate activities around truancy and attendance, child welfare. And so with some of our stimulus dollars, one of the things that we wanted to do, knowing that it is one of the most important things to engage our students, re-engage our students and get students back in our facilities, we wanted to staff this position. So we were able to do that. We're excited about having Ms. Adams. She's already held a couple of calls with her child welfare and attendance officers to try and bring everyone together around the state around this particular issue that is of utmost importance. So I just wanted to recognize and introduce her to you. Mr. Bradford, you're up, sir.
Thank you. Dr. Bromley stole some of my thunder, but many of you know me, Ken Bradford, Assistant Superintendent for the Office of Career and College Readiness. Before I turn it over to Ms. Shalnika and Ms. Hunt, our counsel, just want to give you a little bit of additional context as well. So June 8th, 2020, Dr. Bromley's first day on the job, he called me up into his office. And one of the first things he asked me is, where are our gaps in our portfolio? And so we talked through a bunch of things going on in career and college readiness, and then I guess we got into September, October timeframe, and we started getting some of our COVID numbers. And what really came real clear was that we were missing some students. There were 16,700 students that during the time of COVID didn't arrive back in school. When you went from March of 2020 to October 1st of 2020, 16,700 students were missing. And what he just alluded to was one of those gaps in our portfolio was around child welfare and attendance. And I told him that I remembered back 8 or 9 years ago when there was a reduction in force at the department, one of the positions that we lost was our child welfare and attendance liaison. And he made it a priority for me and my office to ensure that we got a staff member on board and we could start to rebuild that relationship with child welfare and attendance officers. And that hire that we made is Ms. Shanika Adams. She's a practitioner. She's worked in restorative services. She's worked with child welfare and attendance in East Baton Rouge Parish. And she joined our team in June. We're happy to have her on board. And so she's been doing great work. She's been leading monthly calls with child welfare and attendance officers. She's worked with our partnership with LSU to help identify where some of those missing students may have gone, and also best practices around child welfare and attendance. And then over the last couple of months, and this is where we lead into Act 473, our Office of Career and College Readiness, we've also had two areas transition into our office. One is discipline, and the second one is alternative education. And so those now are under the umbrella of our Career and College Readiness Office. Actually, so Shanika will work with the discipline work, but we also have today, his first day on the job, is Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry, stand up for us. Mr. Perry from Tangipahoa Parish. He's going to be working on our alternative education work and programs. So 2 practitioners here with us, and we're happy to have them on board. And then I think next steps, following this presentation today, just want to make you aware of is on January 25th. Many of you have been to it before. We have our Jumpstart Convention. And this year what we have done is we have carved out 100 seats at the Jumpstart Convention, and it's going to be a dedicated child welfare and attendance track all day long for our child welfare attendants. So these things that you're going to see today that we're bringing to Bessie to reconcile the Bulletin 741 and Bulletin 126, the Charter School Bulletin, to bring those bulletins in alignment with the law that was passed, Act 473. We're going to really have a focus on that at the Jumpstart Convention. But we're going to have your district child welfare and attendance office will be with all of the other school system child welfare and attendance officers for the whole day, going through a series of professional development workshops. And it's something we're really excited to have. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Shanika and Joan Hunt to take you through Act 473 and where we will embed that work in Bulletin 741. Now, I know a lot of you, and we were there as well, you were at the Hammond and Sills, the law workshop a couple of weeks ago. The stuff they've shared with you is really the stuff that we have here, so you've probably seen the same thing. Our stuff reconciles with their stuff as well. So with that, Ms. Adams.
Greetings.
Good morning.
So, now I'm super excited to be here. Thank you guys so much for such a great warming and introduction. Full disclaimer, I offer this disclaimer at every meeting I attend. I live in a world of optimism and I come to work every day riding on a unicorn. This is why they have counsel next to me. So, like you said, I got a great chance to go to the school law workshop. And so much of the things that they went over, we'll go over here. He also mentioned what I'm super excited about, the support that has been channeled into child welfare and attendance has been amazing. To have a summit happening January 25th is great. To have these calls, I want to say thank you to many of you, first of all, because I get emails from your CWA saying, hey, my superintendent said I should be on this call, you need to send me an email. Somebody even said, hey, I'm on a waiting list. And my superintendent says, I have to be there. You have to make this happen. So I'm going to try. But, so I just want to say thank you guys so much for all of your support, even though you didn't know who I was. You've still been supportive and I thank you for it. So, like he said, I'm going to discuss Act 473 during the 2021 regular legislation. Let me see, this isn't my clicker, there's one more. Okay, there we go. During the 2021 regular legislative session, Act 473 was passed, and it addresses comprehensive revision of student discipline laws. So that'll include, it provides for additional requirements for student codes of conduct, additional disciplinary options for principals, which I am super excited about because we're now, having it written down that we don't have to just automatically put kids out. There are other steps we can take, so I'm super excited about that. Provides for phone and virtual conferences with parents. Because of COVID, we've learned that we can do a Zoom call, and it's okay. requires discussions with students and parents prior to alternative placements and expulsions. Expands policies on requiring restitution for damage to school property. Also requires expulsion hearings to be held within 15 days. And it limits the length of certain expulsions for criminal behavior to students' period of adjudication. So we're not going to go past the time the court says that they're, in dealing with their sentence. So in December, I have the pleasure of representing LDOE and bringing up a set of policy updates to Bessie. It'll reconcile the requirements of Act 473, which I went over with you guys, with Bulletin 741 in the Louisiana Handbook for School Administrators and Bulletin 126 for charter schools. So these updates include for Bulletin 741 and Bulletin 126, disciplinary regulations, recusal of immediate family members from disciplinary process, to develop a local plan to address student behavior with a focus of evidence-based interventions and supports prioritizing classroom and school-based interventions in lieu of out-of-school disciplinary removals. I want to pause here. Council, stop me if I have to. No, I'm super excited about this because I've seen it work where you can actually do certain programs, and instead of putting a child out of school, there are different interventions you can do to keep that child. First of all, it is literally asking them what happened. Because if I can find out if you're having a bad day before you come into the school, why would I set you up for failure and send you to class? When I can literally send you to your school counselor so that we can make sure you have a good day, you can actually make it through the rest of the day and not get in trouble. Let me not start preaching. Process and requirements for removing and having student return to classroom. Also, when it comes to the student code of conduct, progressive levels of minor through major infractions to identify corresponding minor through major interventions and consequences. Requirements of administrative interventions prior to expulsions and expulsion appeals and processes. Now, reasons for suspension. One of the updates is school bus uniform violations, and with that, it just it outlines how pre-K through 5 should be suspended for this. Reasons for expulsion. It's required a 2/3 vote of the elected board. Length of expulsions. Remember, they're not to exceed the period of adjudication. Referral for screenings by qualified medical professionals. Guidelines for expulsions. Admission to other schools. Admissions to other schools following expulsions. So only with the approval of a governing body, not school, which they previously were expelled from. They're not supposed to, they can't go right back there. Due process for expulsions, timelines, hearings, and written notice. Let's see here. I believe that's it. In terms of, these are the updates I'll be sharing with Bessie. That will, again, be in Bulletin 741, reconciled to be in Bulletin 741 and Bulletins 126. You guys have any questions, comments, testimonies?
So at this point, Mr. Jones, just want to acknowledge this is not an LDOE policy that we created. This is us building policy for our board in relation to what the legislators passed. And we also are not here to act as legal counsel for any school system. So we want to make sure that you're having conversations with your own legal counsel about how this applies to you. Our purpose here solely today is to not go into questions of interpretation of any of this, other than make sure that you're aware that it is something that passed the legislature. And we're certainly happy to, if you don't have access to legislation, pass it your way. So that's basically the update on this particular item, Mr. Jones.
Any questions or comments from council members?
Yeah, I just for clarification, maybe this isn't the place to ask this, but 1307, the reasons for expulsion, require 2/3 vote of the elected board. Just, what are we saying? For every expulsion, then the board is going to have to vote on that.
We're, again, we're just here today to present this. Okay. And we're gonna make sure you have a copy of it.
I wasn't sure, but I just wanted to start.
That's all we wanted to do, is just to make sure you had this information.
I just wanted to start.
So we will get a copy of the actual changes, like word for word, so we can take it back to our attorneys and attorneys.
Also, I'm making sure that, as I've been working with CWAs, I'm also updating our reference guide. So this information will be in the reference guide as well, because I believe we're supposed to all be speaking the same language. And of course, receiving the same information.
Superintendent Alexander.
I don't know if this is a question or a comment. But the board doesn't get involved in the expulsions until the appeals process hits. So I'm assuming that that's tangled up in that 2/3 piece. Okay.
Any other questions or comments from council members? Superintendent Brown, is there anything else from the department? At this time, we'll have public comments. Mr. Morris has.
Thank you, Superintendent Shell. I just want to share with the group that, first of all, thank Superintendent Brumley for this new hire. Just applaud that hire, and also share that I've met with Ms. Adams for a very extended conversation, and she enlightened me on several things on this topic. Some of the things that I haven't really appreciated in the 21st century that attribute to truancy. But one of the things I did was I did ask the department for 5 years of data pre-COVID for the truancy rates in this state. And to my surprise and to my shock, we came back at a 35% average, 35% truancy rate for 5-year average pre-COVID. So, I don't care if we've got $4 billion or $40 billion. If the kids aren't in the class, we're not going to move the needle. So really applaud Superintendent Brumley for this hire. I'm very excited about the positive energy that Ms. Adams brings to this element of education. And I look forward to working with her. And just encourage each of you guys, if you haven't already, please reach out to her, get some of that enthusiasm and some of the ideas that she brings in this space. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Morris, and I'm also going to help him, I'm going to work on him, because the goal is to move from truancy to chronic absenteeism. Truancy is just a symptom. If we can deal with why the student is actually out of the desk, we can actually get them back in. So I need y'all help with that too. All right, thank you so much.
Are there any other cards with public comments? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second to receive. All in favor, aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Our next agenda item, consideration of an update regarding 2020-2021 school leader student learning targets, SLTs. Do I have a motion to receive? Motion by Superintendent Joseph. Second. Superintendent Brown. Excuse me, Superintendent Court.
I've never had.
From DeSoto. He was from DeSoto.
A couple times.
Superintendent Brown.
Actually, neither of us. Okay, thanks, Mr. Jones. At this point, Dr. Chassain will make a presentation relative to SLT.
Good morning, everyone. This is not new information, but it is something that we wanted to share with you all in advisory council today, but this was actually in our last system leader update call. So it is something you are probably already somewhat familiar with, but you may have some lingering questions for today, so we wanted to make sure to bring it to you all. And so this is just from Thomas's earlier presentation about SPS and the simulated SPS from last year will definitely have an impact on our school leader SLTs that we were trying to close out from last year. And so some of you all fall into this first bullet, meaning that in your system, school leaders did not use SPS scores, in which case you were not impacted. You would just calculate your school leader performance as normal. Many of you, though, however, fall into this second bullet, in that many of you calculate SLTs and your school leaders wrote one SLT based on SPS scores and then one based on something else, some other alternate measure. And so in that case, the recommendation is for that alternate SLT to be duplicated to get a final student growth score, a final SLT for your school leaders. Some of you, however, might have used only SPS scores for your SLTs. If that's the case, then your observation score will comprise the total of your evaluation score, since the student growth scores are unavailable. And so just a reminder that the upload window for leader evaluations will be open in CIS from December 6th to December 22nd. And so just to note that the 21-22 cannot be entered during that time. You all know how we shut down CIS for the current year, open it from last year for you all to close out those leader SLTs. It's always fun to get that done between Thanksgiving and Christmas every year, and kind of close that chapter as we head into the new year. Any questions about school leader SLTs from last year and how those are to be calculated?
Superintendent Brown, is there anything else you'd like to share? Questions or comments from any of the council members? At this time, we'll have public comments. We have a comment request from Lee Barrios with teachers in St. Tam. Ms. Barrios?
Hello, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a retired teacher from St. Tammany. I have a master's degree in National Board Certification, and when I retired in 2010, I began full-time advocating, mostly for teachers and for students. When we saw the agenda item about SLTs, the teachers in St. Tammany started contacting me, and because I said I was going to come to the meeting. So I wanted to give to you the reality from a teacher's perspective about student learning targets, and hope that you'll take that into consideration with anything you do about SLTs. What I'm about to read is directly from the mouths of teachers. First, every year I'm sickened with them. I teach science. My fourth graders are assessed in August on third grade standards. In science, different standards are addressed each year. They only roll back over around every 3 years. What I teach in fourth grade is completely different than what they were taught in third. So they generally do well on the diagnostic test. But then in January, they're assessed on fourth grade standards. They've only had 4.5 months of fourth grade standards. It's so frustrating. I'm a teacher that scores 4s, highly effective. On my observation chip, my SLT scores hold me back every year. The SLTs are designed for us to fail. Another, from my understanding of the law states that teachers and administrators are supposed to work together to write the SLT based on the beginning of the year assessment. However, in my district, we're told what our SLT needs to be down to the exact wording. Another, for SLTs at high school. As of this year, our baseline data is derived solely from LEAP 360 diagnostic. As to the validity of SLTs, personally, I'll be eliminating about 50% of the kids off my roster for my SLT due to COVID absences. Students being dropped from school or transferred, students being assigned to alternative locations. Additionally, in the spring, I, like most teachers at my school, will no longer be teaching the majority of the students on my SLT. This is due to the fact that almost every single student has a significant schedule change in the spring and is therefore assigned to a different teacher for almost all of their classes. Therefore, the SLT absolutely does not in any way, shape, or form represent my students' growth nor my ability as a teacher. Another, tracking all the data is overly complicated and time-consuming for the teacher, especially considering most of the data is meaningless. This is the way teachers feel. In my experience, there are tedious spreadsheets sent to teachers to compile multiple data points for each student. In my case, 150 students. There's no way to streamline this process because the data is located in various different pages and reports on the archaic system used by the schools. Furthermore, the data is meaningless. The students do not take the diagnostic test seriously, probably because they are tested to death. And last, everything about SLTs is a pretense. One SLT is for growth in our students' test scores. The district makes the pre-test and the post-test used to measure this growth. Then they dictate what our SLT must say is our target, or percentage of our students who must show growth in the degree that they require. Though the pre-test is in September and the post-test is in January, we have to say that the period covered is a full academic year. So they control every step of the process, yet we're required to write them and be evaluated based on our attainment. So they can pretend teachers are evaluating their students' abilities and creating their own learning targets, the illusion of autonomy that isn't there. Improvements seem, in all of the accountability system, seem to require complexity. Look, we're losing students, we're losing teachers, as I'm sure all of you know. We're using zeros for scores for students who score below basic for school performance scores is outrageous and not helpful. Students aren't fish. You don't catch them, measure them, and throw them out if they fall with underneath the required measurement. Are SLTs really helpful? To whom? Teachers are saying they're not. They know what they need to teach. They get to know their students. They know that they're all individuals. SLTs are just another punitive aspect of accountability. We would love to see the department and all schools move to a constructive method of accountability where it's all about teaching, quality teaching and learning as opposed to all about measurement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berrios. Are there any other public comments? Hearing none, we have a motion on the floor to receive. All in favor, aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Our next agenda item, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 741, Louisiana Handbook for School Administrators regarding the enrollment of children and military personnel and Purple Star schools. We have a motion to receive. Motion made by Superintendent DeValier, second by Superintendent Jenkins. Superintendent Brown.
Yes, sir. So we're excited about this opportunity to try to continue to be even more friendly, or be friendlier rather, to our military families that come to Louisiana or reside in Louisiana. So Act 208 helps military families have the opportunity to remotely enroll before even coming into the state. And then we're also really excited about the Purple Star School Award, which will allow us to give special recognition to schools that serve in military communities. You know, whenever we think about this, we think a good bit about places like Bossier or Alexandria, not Alexandria, or Leesville, Vernon Parish, Beauregard Parish, Bossier, Webster some, and then some down in southeast Louisiana as well. So we're excited about this, and Dr. Ernie Singleton will be making the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ernie Singleton, and I am in the Office of Career and College Readiness. And so Act 208 of the 2021 regular session allows for students of active duty military, U.S. Armed Forces, the Military Reserves, National Guard, or Department of Defense civilian to register students by remote means ahead of actually becoming a Louisiana resident. There are some caveats to that. One is that it is a pending transfer to a military installation or duty location in Louisiana pursuant to the military order. A copy of the official military order transferring the parent or legal guardian to the installation is needed to the local educational governing authority. And there are, they must provide proof of residency in that area until after 10 days of arrival of the specified date. So that is the information that will be going into Bulletin 741 regarding that particular Act 208. Also, Senate Concurrent Resolution 15 of the 2021 regular session was passed and recommended Bessie create a Purple Star School Award program. That particular award program has several caveats that school systems can implement to become recognized as a Purple Star School. And this is a school-based activity, not necessarily a school system-based activity. And this has been requested of our Military Children's Impact Council, MIC3, which I lead for our state. And so each school should have a designated military liaison. They should maintain a dedicated web presence for military families, maintain a student-led program for families, and adopt a resolution supporting a commitment to military families. We will have additional information on this on our website, and if people have questions about implementing this program, they are more than welcome to contact me.
And one of the things we want to do, Mr. Jones, is even on our School Finder website, if a school is designated as a Purple Star school, go ahead and put a logo on there so that as families are looking at various school options, that they would see that that's a military-friendly school.
Any questions or comments from council members? Superintendent Brown, is there anything else you would like to say to would like to share? Are there any public comments? We have a motion on the floor to receive.
I'd like to make a substitute motion, Mr. Jones. Just go ahead. Okay. My substitute motion would be that we endorse this, both Act 208 and SCR 15. I think anything we can do to help our military families and those students, I think we should do. Just my opinion, but I'd like to offer that as a substitute motion.
We have a substitute motion by Superintendent Watts. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Superintendent Powell, second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. That concludes all of our agenda items. Superintendent Brumley, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I just hope everyone enjoys the holiday season. Certainly wishing everyone here a Merry Christmas from my family group.
Our next Superintendent's Advisory Council is scheduled for February 24th, 2022. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion by Superintendent Alexander, second.
Second.
Second by Superintendent Koch. All in favor, aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Great job, Mr. Jones.